Hey everybody, DJ here, and this is going to be part 3 of modeling a wrench in Blender. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 yet, please go check those out. It'll make a lot more sense what we're doing. And of course, if you could please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel, that would be super awesome. It's really easy for you to do, and it's very much helpful for me. We also have a Discord server if you're interested in getting any help or anything like that. And if you'd like to be really awesome like the people scrolling at the bottom of the screen, please consider becoming a patron. Both the links are down below in the video description. So let's just turn off our empty in the background here. And we're going to look at this kind of from the side and go over to the shading tab. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to save this. We're going to change this to cycles. So make sure that you're in cycles. And we're going to look at this in the rendered view. And up here on the top right, you don't need to have an HDRI lighting. You can just check off the scene world, and you can change this to whatever you want. So I'm just going to leave it as the background for right now, just to keep it as it is. And this way everybody will have that sort of HDRI background. And let's go ahead and start to add some materials to this. So you can go over here to the material properties, or you can go right here and click plus. We're just going to call this metal. And move this up a little bit here. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Edit, Preferences, and make sure that you're in CUDA. If you have a uh, optics card, don't use it because when we do one of the steps, it's going to cause a little bit of an issue. Ambient occlusion apparently is not a node that you can use in optics. It will crash, so I'm just warning you ahead of time. Make sure that you have CUDA selected, okay? And if you're using a GPU and a CPU, go ahead and select those if you want. I'm just going to use the CPU for now just so I can save my GPU on rendering. So let's go ahead and we're going to turn off this right here that says show overlays. We're just going to turn that off for right now. And we're going to take a look at our principled BSDF here. We're going to do some pretty basic stuff. So we're just going to take this here and we're going to slide this over because we know it's a metal. But you can see here, I have the text selected. I don't have the wrench, okay? If we turn back on the overlays and we select the text here and then we select the wrench and then back to the text, we can actually hit Control L and then we can link materials, and now they both have the same material. Okay, very, very easy. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this from GGX. I'm going to change it to multiscatter because you tend to get a little bit better stuff going on here. You can see there, if I go back to the GGX, you can see there's this weird sort of dark area there. And the multiscatter tends to, it'll take a little bit more render time, but it tends to make metals look a little bit better, I've found. So, you may or may not agree with that, but I kind of like it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just take the roughness down for now, just so we can see how the metal is shaping up, and it's already looking pretty cool. And we're going to add some things to this to make it look even cooler. So if we look at it from a particular angle, generally how things work is that if you are looking at something, whoops, from a certain angle, as you move more to an edge, it should become more reflective. And as you become more flat to it, like a wall or something like that, it should be not as reflective. So we're going to sort of mimic that because this particular engine, Cycles, doesn't recreate that automatically. I'm going to turn off the overlays here so we get just a nice image. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to go where it says Input here. We're going to add a layer weight. And make sure that you have Node Wrangler installed. Go to Edit Preferences, go to Add-ons, look for Node Wrangler. Node Wrangler right here, make sure that that's checked on. So let's Control Shift left click and we can look at the Fresnel here, and we can also look at the facing, which has to do with how we're actually looking at the object. And the Fresnel here. So depending on what it is you're doing and who you listen to, they'll tell you to use the Fresnel or the layer weight. It really does just sometimes depend on who is talking. I'm just going to use the facing, and we're going to hit Shift A here. We're going to add a color, mix RGB, and we're going to take the facing, put it into the top of the factor, and look through here. And let's just change some colors around. So let's make this maybe a goldish color here and a white color here. And really what we're trying to do is as we look down on it, you can see there's one color, there's this darker color here, and then as we look onto the edge, it's a whiter color. So we're going to actually use this to control the specular, which has to do with the reflectivity of the light. Okay, we're going to use that. Also, we're going to use it for the base color here because a lot of times metals will just kind of depend, the coloring will kind of depend on the angle of which you're kind of looking at it. So we're going to use some generic colors here. We're just going to take a sort of For the edge, actually, we're going to take a reddish color or a more yellowed color, like this maybe. And then for this one here, we're going to use a darker color. We're just going to use something like that. Actually, I'm going to take both these and make them a little bit darker, something like this. And if we pipe that into the base color and just view through there, you can see that we are now changing the color based on the angle that we're viewing. So you can see there it's a different sort of darker color. And then when we go more to the side, it's a little bit lighter and more of this sort of bronzy color. So hopefully you can see that as we move around. And this may or may not be realistic, but it's something fun that you guys can do. And you can find all sorts of things online that can show you the quote realistic PBR way of making these metals, but we're just going to make something fun here. So let's make it something like that because I really like that copper look. And we're also going to take this, run it through a converter color ramp, take the facing through here, Control Shift left click to look through there. And we're going to use this, as I said, to control the specular. So white means that it is a brighter surface, and dark means that it's not as dark or not as reflective. So let's take that, put that through the specular, and take a look through there. And you can alter this around as much as you'd like. Maybe instead of it being pure black and pure white, you change these around a little bit to something like this. And there's a lot of people who have some pre-made nodes that will control your specularity based on some of the coloring that you choose and all kinds of stuff like that. We're just doing some approximation just to get something decent going here. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to add some roughness. We're going to make a little roughness map. So let's save this, and we're just going to use a procedural. So we're going to add a texture. Shift A to add a texture. We're going to go to the Musgrave, and let's take a look through here. If you have this node selected, if you hit Control T, you'll have a mapping node and a texture coordinate. Let's just take the object information and put it in there for now. You can see that it wraps it kind of nicely here. And let's take the scale. I'm going to put it up to like 460 because we're going to make this look like it's been machined and it has sort of like, I don't know, like this, you know, iron sort of look where it has these little tiny like pits and stuff like that in it. So we're going to do that. Maybe add some luminarity, maybe something like this. You can change the dimension to something that you like, change the detail around a little bit, but I wouldn't do too much of that. We really won't see too much of, that sort of small detail when you're looking at a texture this small. And we can go ahead and we can pipe that into a mix RGB if you want, where you can look through there and you can actually change some of these colors. So you can see there's a reddish color there, and you can actually use this to mix with this here. We're not going to do all that work. We're just going to duplicate this color ramp with Shift D, pipe this in here, pipe this in here, look through here, and we'll take a look and see what we're doing. So if I take this and make this all the way black, and I take this one and make it all the way white, white are going to be the rougher areas, as you see there, and black is going to be the more reflective areas, as you can see. So what we'll go ahead and do here is just make this not as reflective as 100% black. So kind of pull this up maybe a little bit like that, and take this one and make this a little bit more reflective by pulling this down a little bit like this. And there we have something that looks kind of like that. And of course, as we always will want to do with something like this, is we'll want to add also a normal map here. So we can actually take, if we add a vector here, a bump, and take this height that we used for the roughness, put that into the height right here, take that and move it into the normal, we can then create a bumpy surface and pop this down to like a 0.1 or something like that. Or you can go like a 0.05, whatever you think is going to look the best for your particular client and what you think it might look best, for the kind of look you're trying to get. And you can do things like, multiply scratch patterns over the top and do all that stuff. This is not going to be that kind of lesson. So if you want that, let me know in the comments below and we can work on something like that. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of cool, fun, procedural fun to this by creating sort of like a dirtiness area where if you've ever seen tools or objects in general, a lot of times things will collect in the little pits and crevices and things like that. So what we can do is we can actually use the ambient occlusion. So if I go to input and I click on ambient occlusion, and this is where you want to make sure that you have CUDA on and not optics, because if you're using optics, it may cause your particular session to crash. It depends on what version you're using. And if we control shift and left click through there, you can see that we can now see some of this stuff here. And if we look in to this node, and you click on local only, you can see that it only pertains to its particular object. It's not the text is not taking the wrench into consideration here, but if I turn this off, it is taking the wrench into consideration right there. That's why you can see this darker edge right here. And if you take the distance and you push this up or down, you can often you can see some sort of change depending. We can actually, I think, see it more over here. Let's see. So you can see over there on the right here, you can see that the distance is changing the coloring. And we actually want to make sure that it just stays in the crevices. We don't want it to be too crazy. Let's take it off of local only and do something kind of like this. And if you want it to be a little bit more obvious, you can always hit Shift A, add a converter color ramp, and pop it right in between, take the black and move it up. And you can see now we're really controlling how much dirt, quote unquote, there is. See that? So I'll just leave it like this right now so I can show you what we're going to do. We're going to basically pipe this into a new node. So if we hit Shift A, add a color like this, and we'll just pipe this into here for now and take this one into the factor up here and take a look at the mix. And you can see that this color right here, if we make this red, it makes it a little bit more obvious what's going on. The dirty sections are the top color. And if you look at this, you can see the white is the top color. And or sorry, the white is the bottom color here, and the black is this top color. So if we shift these, and then we take this and we make this more of a reddish color, or you can even pipe a image map through here, and then take that and put it through the base color and look through the principled BSDF, you can see that now we're starting to see some other colors show up, and you can really change this around to make it look really, really interesting. Now, what we kind of want to do here is we want to sort of drive the roughness a bit with this particular technique, because if we can add roughness, we can actually make this look a little bit more like rusty if you kind of want to do that. So if you take the roughness here, and if we hit Shift A to add color, mix RGB, and this is where things get a little bit crazy. We're going to put this into the factor here and look through here, and we want to actually put this one in the bottom. And the top, we want this to be more white, so we can actually control this a little bit more. But you can actually start to do some things like this here, where we do screen. We can change this to a screen effect, and actually take this one and put it on the top, and then take this here, and we can change this to white or dark, and you can see how that's sort of changing how that works there. So if we take this, make this a little bit whiter, or we take this here and we can actually screen it this way too, or flip these around and move it like this. You can sort of mix these colors together in a bunch of different ways. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to keep this on mix, and I'm just going to bring this like so. And let's view through here for the roughness. You can see that there's this sort of effect going on here. And you might have already thought of this, but we can then control some of the metallic with this as well. And what that will do is if we add a converter color ramp, see how it's getting crazy. If we start to move these around here and take this right here, let's actually feed this into this one right here and put this into the metallic here. Now we can really start to control what is metallic and what is more of this sort of rusty thing, because sometimes, rust really shouldn't look fully metallic. And we can sort of move this around like this. And I actually want to sort of soften this because it's a little bit crazy. So let's do something like that. And there we can see that we're really starting to change these colors around and add some really cool effects. So all that kind of stuff here that I showed you really, really quick and made this sort of spaghetti monstrosity down here, that's really going to be something that you have to think about and decide whether or not you want to go that far for your client or just for yourself for practice. It's a really fun thing to practice, adding some of these around, adding some color mix nodes, using screen, using multiply, experimenting around to see what they all do, because no matter how much anyone tells me the math that's behind it, I often get confused. I usually just sort of pick one that works for me and then go from there. And usually my client is not the wiser, and it really often does not matter. So from there, you can pretty much start to set up your scene for how you want to render it out. This particular tutorial is not going to be necessarily on doing that particular part. If you'd like to see that done, please let me know in the comments below and we can see about creating something like that. But really, this was about showing you how to do some hard surface modeling on an object that's not super circular or, symmetrical, and just give you a chance to experiment and create something that's a little bit out of the box so that you can test yourself and see how well you can create something like this. So, thanks so much. Hopefully, you learned something. And if you do have any comments or critiques or anything like that, make sure that you leave the comments down below. And I will see you all next time on DJ Tutorials.